Holy crap, what's going on? 2 videos in 1 week? OMG, the world's coming to an end. No? Okay, whatever. So, okay, last we left off, Jenny and I were in a hotel in Vegas, and the following morning we both woke up around 8 o'clock to leave for Los Angeles. So, the drive from Las Vegas to Los Angeles was about 4.5 hours. There really wasn't really much to see, just a lot of desert, and that was pretty much about it. We ended up getting to the area that we were going to meet our friend Lisa at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This gave us about 4 hours of downtime before we were going to meet up. So Jenny and I just decided to find a place to get some lunch. We ended up settling on a place called Manpuku, which is a Japanese grill. And I've never been to a Japanese grill before, so this was a completely new experience for me. It was really cool because you had the table, and in the middle of your table was a grill that after you were seated they would turn on. Your food would get brought out to you, and then the meat was all uncooked, and you would just put it on the grill and then cook it yourself, I guess for personal preference. But yeah, so that was really cool. And there was no silverware either at this place. And I am very terrible at using chopsticks. However, Jenny kind of gave me a little lesson on how to use them, at least for the time being, because it was kind of bad, but I managed, and it was really good food. Had rice and then all this extra stuff that you could mix in with your food. So that was cool. And after we finished eating, we went to the little nearby shops. It was like a miniature, well, not really miniature, but it was like an Asian district. So they had different Asian restaurants, stores. So we ended up checking out one of the stores, which had tons of stuff and lots of decorations, action figures, toys, that kind of thing. The spot that we had parked at, we had there for 2 hours, so we figured we might as well make the most of it since we had the time. Afterward, we decided that we would just go to the beach on by the Santa Monica Pier, and then we would just chill out there for a couple hours because we could. And that was a lot of fun. We got there, and the weather was perfect that day, probably upper 70s, lower 80s. Jenny and I walked along the beach for a while towards the Santa Monica Pier. And then once we got to that area, we decided just to check out the pier, see what it all offered. Lots of souvenir shops and the cool carnival rides. So we spent a couple hours there before we headed back to our friend's place. And then we get there. There's a little confusion because apparently our friend didn't tell her roommates that we would be visiting, even though she knew a couple weeks in advance. So after all that was cleared up, we went to Road to Seoul Korean barbecue with Lisa and Jeff. And so we had more Asian barbecue. It's pretty much almost the same thing as the Japanese one, except they bring you a lot of meat. So I tried squid here, and I wasn't sure about it at first because I'm not a big fan of seafood, and we weren't sure how long to cook it exactly. The taste wasn't bad in itself. It was the texture more than anything else. It was slightly rubbery, but that could have just been the way we cooked it, so I'm not saying it was bad. It wasn't the most amazing thing I've ever tasted, but it was definitely something that I decided I could try because, how many times am I going to get the opportunity? And after that, we went driving through the Los Angeles area towards the Chinese Theater because we wanted to do a little sightseeing because we weren't going to be staying the night in Los Angeles. We ended up going to the Chinese Theater and the Hollywood Walk of Fame, checked that out for a while. And by the Chinese Theater, they have a staircase that has sensors on it, so when you go up the stairs, you can hear piano music playing, and all the steps are painted like piano keys, which is kind of cool. Around 11 o'clock is when we ended up leaving that area, and probably it wasn't until about 11:30 when we started actually leaving Los Angeles. And I have to admit that I've never been in a place where there is so much traffic at practically all hours of the day. We got to Las Vegas at about 3 a.m. and we just ended up staying with my uncle, who was currently staying at his condo in Las Vegas. So we didn't have to worry about getting a hotel room, and it was just nice to have a place to stay where we wouldn't have to worry about paying. And that's all I have for that day of the trip. Most of it was spent driving, but we did spend, about 8 hours in Los Angeles, and that was fun. And we got to see I got to see the Hollywood sign. I got to see the Hollywood sign on the hill. Jenny was driving, so she couldn't see it. But it was cool, it was fun, and I think it would be fun to visit again, especially the beach, because it was just amazing. So that is all.